Good afternoon. My name is Nestor Astorga. Uh, just a second because I am trying to share my screen. 1 second. All right. Good afternoon. My name is Nestor Astorga. I'm a senior business advisor for the UTSA SBDC COVID Business Recovery Accelerator. The topic to talk about today is optimizing SBA's PPP loan forgiveness. That's the topic. Let me see. All right. So myself, I'm an accountant, auditor, certified mediator, business owner, senior business advisor, and we help our clients access to capital, traditional and non-traditional funding sources, income alternatives, and profit alternatives. Our program, COVID Business Recovery Accelerator, was born to help clients affected by COVID, and we are helping with relief, rebooting, recovery, resilience. Uh, and our phone number there is 210-458-2272. Email businessrecovery@utsa.edu. Our services are provided from Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. And we have a webpage, txsbdc.org/business recovery. If it is highly recommended to visit our webpage because we have many resources at no cost to you, some on-demand trainings and other topics related to assistance, PPPs, IDLs, bankruptcy, many topics that can be very helpful for your activity. Our services are provided in business one-on-one counseling, and we also do business training, events, and information. This training is brought to you as a public service. It is not designed as a substitute for legal or tax advice, nor is a comprehensive statement of the law. The last update on this presentation was done on July the 2nd of 2021 on the same day. So everything that is going to be touched on this subject it was updated up to that date, except the fact that on the 11th of July, the San Antonio Business Journal published an article by Andy Medici, and the name of the article is SBA Preparing New PPP Loan Forgiveness Portal for Small Businesses, which in a nutshell, it said that according to the Association of International CPAs, SBA could soon launch a web portal that would allow some small business owners to apply for forgiveness on the SBA platform instead of starting that with their lender. This could help deal with a non-responsive lender. So basically, this is this if this comes to be true, is going to be great news, because some people are having sometimes issues with the lenders that they applied for PPP, and they might have a chance to apply directly to a web page from the SBA. But up to now, the presentation is made as if you as of July the 2nd of this year. Okay, so today's program, we're going to see first an overview of the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP. Then we're going to talk the PPP loan forgiveness process, eligible uses for PPP forgiveness, documentation requirements when applying for forgiveness, hiring a professional to do this application, very important, and record keeping. Then we will touch on special situations, excess loan amount errors, what to do if mistakes have been found prior to applying for forgiveness, very important. Hopefully not, but possibly appeals might be something that you need to consider later on, or an overview of changes in ownership and some references. My assumption as of you, as my audience here, is that all past calculations were done properly. when requested a PPP. All your certifications previously signed were and are still valid and applicable up to the moment before forgiveness. And there are no known mistakes in previous submitted information or new information not disclosed at the time of PPP application that affects the original application eligibility and forgiveness. Okay, so um, having these assumptions cleared, we're going to start with an overview of the PPP. And another thing is that if you later need some these slides, feel free to contact me later on, and I can provide them. So this is the overview of the PPP. Basically, number one, eligible business owners could have applied to the PPP, which, if approved, was released by the lenders as a loan. So it came first as a loan. Number two, then borrowers are required to spend the funds during a specific period, which can be from 8 to 12, to 24 weeks on eligible expenses, mostly payroll. We will discuss that a little bit later. So it can be considered for forgiveness. Number three, exhausting all the funds, a borrower can request forgiveness with the lender. I put a parenthesis here. It might be that SBA might be issuing a new portal, but we're still waiting on that. Number four, if a borrower does not request forgiveness, the PPP stays as a repayable loan. Very important. This is not automatic. It will never be converted to a grant or something similar. You need to request forgiveness. This is one of things that you need to do. Okay, so the PPP loan forgiveness process works like this. Number one, you first need to request forgiveness to the lender where you applied for that PPP. Number two, revision of the PPP forgiveness application by the lender. The lender will check your PPP forgiveness application and documentation that is required according to the form that you're using. And this might take up to 60 days, according to the current guidance from SBA. Number three, once the lender is satisfied and clarified with the borrower any doubts of this application, then they will submit this to the SBA, and the SBA will check this application and documentation. And according again to the SBA guidelines, they might take up to 90 days for a decision, which is number four. SBA will decide if your loan is completely forgiven, partially forgiven, or non-forgiven at all. It depends on your case. Now, number five, possible differences on forgiveness, and it will go back from the SBA to the lender, and the lender will inform the borrower if you know whatever happened with that PPP forgiveness application, it will come the same way it went to the SBA. Now it is going to come SBA, lender, and then borrower. In the situation where there was a partial forgiveness or not forgiven at all, the borrower will need to begin to make payments of the unforgiven PPP loan. If this is something that the borrower thinks that there might be a mistake or something is completely wrong and it is not does not agree with this decision of the SBA, then possible appeals, an appeal process can be requested. There is complete guidance for that process on how is to be made, and we have that information if you later on, hopefully not, come into this situation. And after the appeal, well, SBA that will determine, in that appeal, if what is going to proceed, and whatever it is, whatever result, we have to abide by that. Now, there is an eighth number here, and it's the audit by the SBA. The SBA can come at any time to check your PPP from the very beginning to the forgiveness, and for whatever reason. So it's very important to keep everything, all records, documentation, for enough time, which I myself recommend my clients to keep it for at least 6 years. Between 6 years, it will be more than enough. But every step of the way, from the first communication before requesting the PPP, all the way to the last communication with forgiveness or payment, or whichever was the end result. Where to submit the forgiveness application? I already said that, but this is going to be, as of now, with the lender that processed your PPP loan. That's the way it is set as of now. It might be possible that in the near future, according to the news that I told you about, SBA might make a new portal that you can submit this application directly. But as of now, is with the lender that processed your PPP loan. When to submit the forgiveness application? Within 10 months after the last day of the maximum covered period, that can be between any number of weeks, between 8 to 24 after the loan is disbursed. Except that the borrower applying for forgiveness of a second draw PPP loan is more than 150,000, must submit the loan forgiveness application for his first draw PPP loan before or simultaneously with the loan forgiveness application for its second draw PPP loan. What forms to use to apply for PPP forgiveness, first and second draw? And SBA published on May the 24th of this year, 2021, the following forms. There are 3 forms. The first is the SBA 3508. All expire on September the 30th of 2021. And here's, I'm sorry, I see a mistake over here. This first needs to be the S. Just a second. I apologize because here I am identifying a mistake in the slide. Yes, the first one should be the 3508S, S as Samuel, and these are for 150,000 or less. I clarify, the first one is the S, 3508S, and then the middle one is the 3508EC, and this is for loans above 150,000. And then we have the 3508 without the letter. These, unfortunately, these are in my slides are incorrect. And this is for more than 150,000 and reduced headcount or salary, and do not qualify for safe harbors. In other words, this last one is what they call the long form, the 3508. This is most complex to fill out. The 3508S, it's the simple form. It requests to fill out. It's pretty simple, but don't because it is simple, don't discard that it is easy to fill. There are a couple of calculations that you also need to make, and documentation that needs to be connected to the information that is reported in these forms. So it's important to check which is the one that applies to your case. The 3508S form, which is the simple one, it's only for borrowers that receive PPP loans of less than 150,000, Borrowers with loans of 50,000 or less might not be subject to a reduction in forgiveness due to decrease in FTEs or wage and salary levels, and you still have to calculate and determine your forgiveness amount, establish the documentation verifying eligible expenses, and what documentation must be maintained. As I was saying, I mean, not because it's simple, it means that you don't have to keep records. You have to keep records. Important. Now, the easy form, it comes for loans above 150,000, and in this case, there are a couple of situations here. And situation number one is for borrowers that did not reduce salaries or hourly wages of employees by more than 25% during covered period. Payroll period compared to the most recent full quarter before the covered period. And situation number two, borrower did not reduce employees or average paid hours to employees between January the 1st, 2020 and the end of covered period. Ignore reductions that arose from an inability to rehire individuals who were employees on February the 15th, 2021, if borrower was unable to hire similarly qualified employees for unfilled positions on or before the December the 31st, 2020, or for a PPP loan made after December the 27th of 2020, the last day of the covered period. Also ignore reductions in an employee's hours that the borrower offered to restore and employee refused. There's these two situations. We have to consider a situation number one discussed previously, and this new situation number three, which is borrower was unable to operate during the covered period at the same level of business activity as before February 15, 2020 due to compliance with requirements established or guidance issued by between March 1st, 2020 and the last day of the covered period by the Secretary of Health and Human Services, the Director of Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, or the Occupational Safety and Health Administration related to the maintenance of standards of sanitation, social distancing, and any other work or customer safety requirement related to COVID-19. Self-employed individuals without employees can use the easy application. And the form, the 3508 without any letters, this is the ones that do not qualify for either the 3508S or the 3508EC, which supposedly are more simple. But this is the 3508 is called the long form, so it's more complex even to fill out. There is a Spanish glossary published by the SBA on March 30 of 2021. For those Spanish-speaking people, this might be a very helpful because it translates the technical the technical aspects, the technical topics wording, which is it might be confusing. Okay. Payment of non-forgiven PPP loans, any balance not forgiven will become a loan at 1% for 5 years or 2 years for loans made before June the 5th of 2020. Now, let's change subject, and now we're going to talk about eligible uses of PPP funds for forgiveness. Here, basically, we have, I call it two buckets. The first bucket is payroll, and the second bucket is a non-payroll as follows. So for payroll, you need to use PPP funds at a minimum of 60%. As follows. And on one end, we have employee payrolls, and which can be we have owner-employee payroll, and we have also self-employment, independent contractor, sole proprietor, wages, commissions, income, or net earnings, depending if that person is the owner of the business. On the other end, we have a second bucket, which is I call the non-payroll bucket expenses, and the PPP can be used maximum at a 40% as follows. And this is for rent, slash or mortgage interest, depending if you rent the place or you're paying it. It's your property, but you are paying mortgage interest. This can qualify. And when I refer to this, I'm talking about the commercial place that you use for your business. Same with utilities. Utilities is the commercial, the utilities used for the commercial place that you use. There are 4 new ones that came on 2021, which is covered operation expenditures, covered property damage, covered supplier costs, and covered worker protection expenditures. In regards to employee payroll, it covers salary, wages, commissions, or similar compensation, cash tips, or the equivalent based on the employee records of past tips, or in the absence of such records, a reasonable good faith employer estimate for such tips, payment for vacation, parental, family, medical, or sick leave, allowance for separation or dismissal, payment for the provision of employee benefits consisting of group health care or group life, disability, vision, or dental insurance, including insurance premiums and retirement, payment of state and local taxes assessed on compensation of employees, payroll costs for an independent contractor or sole proprietor would be considered the wages, commissions, income, or net earnings from self-employment or similar compensation. In regard, there are a couple of non-forgivable payroll costs, and pay attention to these because these are qualified wages taking into account determining the CARES Act employee retention credit, the employee retention credit under Section 3132 of the Internal Revenue Code, and then 3, the disaster credit under Section 303 of Relief Act disaster credit, and B, premiums of COBRA continuation coverage taking into account in determining the credit under Section 6432 of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986. Also, letter I, number 1, compensation to employees whose principal place of residence is outside of the United States. These are not covered, are not forgivable, not eligible. And compensation of an employee in excess of an annual salary of 100,000 prorated as necessary, which applies only to cash compensation and not to non-cash benefits that include employer contributions to defined benefit or defined contribution retirement plans, payment for the provision of employee benefits consisting of group healthcare coverage, including insurance premiums, and payment of state and local taxes assessed on compensation of employees. Also, non-forgivable payroll costs, federal employment taxes imposed or withheld between February 15, 2020, and including the employees and employers' share of FICA, and Railroad Act taxes and income taxes required to be withheld from employees. And number 4, qualified sick and family leave wages, for which a credit is allowed under the Section 7001 and 7003 for the Family's First Coronavirus Response Act. Those would not be forgivable. Now, whenever you talk about expenses, whether they are payroll or non-payroll, you will hear these definitions, which is incurred and or paid, and basically those incurred prior to the cover period the expenses should be those incurred prior to the covered period and paid during the covered period, and those incurred during the covered period and paid on or before the next regular billing date, even if the billing date is after the covered period. In general, payroll costs paid or incurred during covered period are eligible for forgiveness. Payroll costs are generally incurred on the day that employees' pay is earned. And here we have the comparison. On one end, paid is on the day of the paychecks are distributed or borrower originates an ACH. On the other hand, are incurred during the borrower's last paid period are eligible for forgiveness if paid on or before the next regular payroll date. Otherwise, payroll costs must be paid during the covered period to be eligible. And for this, you can read the SBA PPP frequently asked questions published on August 11, 2020, page 2, question 1 and question 2. Okay, so we're switching to a different topic. Documentation requirements when applying for forgiveness. Documentation on payroll is bank statements, payroll processing records, detailed proof of payments to employees, payroll tax filings, the 941, state and local taxes, proof of employer contributions, canceled checks, receipts, statements. On non-payroll concepts, mortgage interest, it would be the lender amortization schedule, canceled checks, receipts, statements, rent, copy of the lease agreement, canceled checks, receipts, statements, utilities, same thing, canceled checks, invoices, statements, and for the other ones, more or less it will be the I will consider to be the same. Canceled checks, receipts, statements, invoices, anything that proves that expense. Important considerations when making numbers and filling forms. Covered periods basically is the time you have to spend your PPP funds for forgiveness purposes. There is no longer an alternative covered period for payroll expenses. This is very important because last year, 2020, we had the alternative covered period for payroll expenses, not this year. So for those who already applied, the rule changed. Important to be aware of this. Expenses, you need to check that are incurred or paid according to what we already talked. You need to be aware of what they call the full-time equivalent employees, the FTEs. There are FTE safe harbors that you need to be aware of. Payroll caps, what form applies to you. The commercial real estate you use, do you occupy it 100%? Very important, because in some cases there might be people that use partially a building, an office, commercially, and the rest is being used by another tenant, or maybe they are subleasing some part, and these situations affect the PPP forgiveness. So you need to be very watchful about that. Now, the other thing that can change a little bit your forgiveness is if you work from home. You might remember that the IRS considers the home office. So these are things that you need to check when filling out the forms, and there are guidelines for this. Payroll caps, compensation eligible for forgiveness is capped at 100,000 annually per each employee, which in a 8-week covered period, an employee's the max compensation can be 15,385,000. For a 20-week covered period, it can be 45,154 max compensation per employee. An example of 20-week covered period, it might be that on April the 1st of 2021 received the PPP loan funds, and on August the 19th, 2021 spent the funds during those 20 weeks. Payroll caps, owner employee, and I say here, check. This guy is not the employee. This is owner employee. The caps change a little bit. For an 8-week covered period, it's 15,385,000 max compensation per individual, the same as a regular employee. Where it changes is here, 24-week covered period. Now we're talking about 20,833 max compensation per individual. Owner employees that have 5% or less interest in a business are not held to owner employee compensation caps. Very important. So if you have a owner that is less than 5% owner, has a 5% less ownership, are not treated like an owner employee. FTE safe harbors allows to avoid penalties for non-returning employees if they document and justify on-field positions due to, number 1, employees refusing to return when written offer provided. Number 2, fired for a just cause. Number 3, employee resignation. Number 4, voluntary requested and received reduced hours. Number 5, written offer to restore reduced hours and was rejected by employee. And number 6, unable to require qualified individual to fill position before end of covered period. A 24-week option requires documented attempt to rehire and fill position. Remember, whenever anything that relates to employees, payroll, and everything, you need to keep a good file on this and keep it there for the 6 years that I was talking you about. I will touch a little bit more on that topic later, but anything that connects to employees, you need to document everything. Um, Salary hourly wage reduction safe harbor allows for business owners to avoid penalties should annual salary or hourly wages be adjusted within 25% of reference period wages by 8 weeks or 24 weeks. Okay, changing subject. Hiring a professional to do this PPP loan forgiveness application. And I wanted to touch on this topic because I have some clients that they have a CPA that calculates their taxes and everything, even the bookkeeping. But they thought that the application was pretty simple to apply when they requested the PPP, and they didn't needed the services of their tax preparer CPA accountant. And now they are facing a lot of questions, problems, um, mistakes that now that PPP cannot be forgiven because it was not consulted originally with the person in charge of taxes and accounting. So I personally recommend to hire professional assistants, especially if the amount of money that you received as a PPP, um, if you don't fill out the forms properly, you know, it cannot be forgiven, unfortunately, or if you use the funds for different things or mistakes done, so that's what is at stake. Sometimes it's better to pay the whatever extra additional fees the professionals will charge you, and help you along the process, that to do it yourself, because doing it yourself, instead of you know uh, uh, paying those fees to the professionals, you might be losing the forgiveness. So depending, it's a case by case situation, but that's why I am an advocate of the use of professional assistants. Who can do this? Accountants, tax preparers, CPAs, because they are accustomed to forms, terminology, instructions, accounting, etc. They can help you avoid costly mistakes, and also to prevent a future audit and or an investigation. Um, Future audit or investigations, they know the case and documentation, and then they can help you navigate it better in case that this kind of situations happen. um, and also very important is to ask them before requesting their services if they are taking this type of topic within their professional services, because not everybody, not all accountants or tax preparer or CPAs are dealing with PPPs. So it's important to know, and if they don't, if they are not doing this, it might be better to check with a professional that is dealing with PPPs. Um, Recommendations for PPP borrowers of 2 million or more, and this it came from a loan necessity questionnaire that the SBA is requesting from them. Right now, there is for those who got 2 million or more, this loan necessity questionnaire was going to be requested by the SBA. And this is a not very clear questionnaire, which opened the door to a lot of concerns. In fact, right now there is a lawsuit in regards to the SBA because of this loan necessity questionnaire. I don't know what is going to happen. Apparently, they might drop this off, but it is not clear. My suggestion is to get legal advice to fill out the loan necessity questionnaire prior to submitting it. And when I say legal advice, I am talking about a tax attorney, not an accountant, and not a CPA, because requesting PPP loan forgiveness, SBA might consider borrower circumstances and actions before and after borrower certification, given the uncertainty as to how this process will be administered and how the information will be used. Borrowers should consider delaying the submission of the forgiveness application until they are able to respond that questionnaire. And we will talk later on why tax attorneys and not CPAs. Record keeping. Okay, so this is a new topic. Because 3508 says that SBA might request additional information for the purposes of evaluating the borrower's eligibility for the PPP loan and loan forgiveness, SBA may request information and documents to review those calculations as part of its loan review or audit processes. SBA Form 3508S does not require borrowers to show the calculations used to determine the loan forgiveness amount. However, SBA might request information and documents to review those calculations as part of its loan review or audit processes. My suggestion is to keep it for 6 years in your files after the date the loan is forgiven or repaid in full. Now, recommendations on what to keep. PPP loan application and supporting documentation, tax returns and financial statements, corporate organization and or ownership structure, copies of all emails and or correspondence with lender and SBA, PPP loan forgiveness application and supporting documentation, PPP loan documentation executed, and records of employees. Your notes and paperwork about calculation and those who help will help you remember several years from now if an audit happens. And this is very important because let's say that in 5 years you get an audit. I mean, honestly, myself, after a period of time, I just don't remember what I did before. So I need to keep my notes. It's very important to keep a very well documented binder on binders on everything that you did and how did you came to the numbers, why did you answer the questions of the applications. One note about the applications, lenders, as of now, many of them, you don't need to submit the PDF, or you don't need to submit a form because they have an electronic version of the same 3508. But it's good to print them out and run the exercise in your desk at your pace before applying for forgiveness. So it is highly recommended to print out those forms, the latest ones, and run the exercise before applying for forgiveness. In some, you need to have the complete history of the PPP loan from the request to the last step, which might be forgiveness or possibly repayment. Loan necessity questionnaire. As of now, I think it's still out there, and this is for borrowers with PPP loans of 2 million or more. However, this loan necessity questionnaire can be requested if an audit comes, no matter the amount. So I mean, just be careful with this. For borrowers with income and or profits of 2020 superior to those on 2019, but that had a quarter on 2020 with a reduction in respect to the same quarter of 2019, I for these two cases, I would prepare in advance the loan necessity questionnaire form and keep it on my files, just in case later on in an audit, years from now, it might be requested. You have that information at hand. Very important. Now, special situations. I, because the PPP guidance since its inception back in 2020 up to now has been revised, I don't know, more than 45 times. There was a guidance published in regards to excess loan amount errors, because they foresaw that this might happen eventually. So this is where I'm going to touch about this. And the SBA published a document for these cases on January 15, 2021. It's called SBA Procedural Notice 5000-20078. I'm going to touch just highlights about it. But if you need to know more about this, I strongly suggest you to check it in the SBA.gov webpage in /documents, because number one, it defines what is an excess loan amount error. Number two, what is the effect of an excess loan amount error on loan forgiveness? Number three, when preparing or reviewing a loan forgiveness application, if a borrower or lender identifies an error that resulted in a borrower receiving a larger PPP loan that the borrower was eligible to receive, or if an excess loan amount error is discovered after the lender has already submitted a forgiveness decision to the SBA. It also has, if a lender discovers an excess loan amount error after the SBA has issued a final loan forgiveness decision and remitted payment. What is the effect of an excess loan amount error on the SBA loan warranty? And what is the effect on the excess loan amount error on a borrower's obligation? This is very important because, in a way, it's good to keep the documentation that proves that you always did everything in good faith. And I guess this procedural notice helps you clear some aspects if you are in a situation like this. Okay, so now let me switch to a different topic. Now, what to do if mistakes have been found prior to applying for a PPP loan forgiveness? What if you did not filled out the first application where you requested the PPP properly? You made some mistakes that you later found that you had issues there. Now what? Here you fall into the risk of an investigation, where investigations might want to examine if the borrower knew or should have known that certain information on the application was inaccurate or false, among other points of revision with a deeper scope. Again, here, it's where you need to check the cost benefit of hiring somebody, a professional, to help you clear out the way. And here is where you can either check with a CPA, and I'm gonna add a CPA that knows the topic, because not all CPAs I have seen, not everybody is involved in the PPP. So ask the CPA, your CPA, or any other, if they are covering the PPP topic, or can be also a tax attorney. But again, the same question: are they covering PPPs? And why a tax attorney? Because a tax attorney has the client attorney privilege, one thing that the CPAs do not have. Why is important is to prepare to distinguish a mistake from a fraud. We don't want SBA to, if we acted in good faith, sometimes actions can be looked in different ways, and we can commit a mistake, can be seen as a fraud, depending, here's where, depending what you did, this is where sometimes depending on the level of mistake and the amounts, you might be willing to see a tax attorney for this purpose and to avoid the ineligibility of PPP forgiveness or the PPP loan, or worse. It might happen. I mean, depending on the amount of money that we're talking about PPPs, there are PPPs very very big amounts. Here is where you need to do that cost benefit analysis and check with either CPAs or tax attorneys. Appeals, well, it comes in the situation where the SBA already made a decision and you do not agree with that. For the appeals, I suggest you to go and see the following documents published by the SBA, because this is the guidance that will help you understand how to do an appeal. And basically, the on January the 15th, 2021, SBA published the procedural notice 5000-20077, and they also have another one that is that you have to consider, which is on August 11th, 2020, the SBA 13 CFR Part 134 appeals of SBA loan review decisions under the PPP. Those two are extremely important. Appeal situations, when can you go to an appeal? Well, number one, borrower was ineligible for a PPP loan. I mean, this is we're talking serious things. Number two, borrower was ineligible for PPP loan amount received. Number three, PPP borrower used the PPP loan proceeds for unauthorized uses. Number four, borrower is ineligible for PPP loan forgiveness in the amount determined by the lender in its full or partial approval. And number five, borrower is ineligible for PPP loan forgiveness in any amount when the lender has issued a full denial decision to the SBA. Appeals: who and when can a borrower appeal? Only the borrower on a loan for which SBA has issued a final SBA loan review decision has standing to appeal the SBA loan review decision to the SBA Office of Hearings and Appeals, also known as OHA. Individual owners of a borrower and lenders do not have standing to appeal on an SBA loan review decisions. An appeal petition must be filed within 30 calendar days after, number one, the appellant receipt of the final SBA loan review decision, or number two, notification by the lender of the final SBA loan review decision, whichever is earlier. So these are the situations for an appeal. There is the situation that we have seen, which is changes in ownership, and also SBA has made some publication in this regard. And if you are in a situation like this, go to sba.gov/documents and look for the procedural notice 5000/2057 published on October the 2nd of 2020. And the purpose of this notice is to provide information of the required procedures for changes in ownership of an entity that received the PPP funds, the PPP borrower. Change of ownership happens when, number one, at least 20% of common stock or ownership interest of a PPP borrower is sold or transferred. Number two, PPP borrower sells or transfers at least 50% of its assets at fair market value. Number three, PPP borrower is merged with or into another entity. Businesses contemplating a material change in ownership should provide written notice to their PPP lenders along with a copy of the drafted agreement prior to completing the transaction. Now, what are the takeaways from this presentation? Basically, I would encourage you to take all the courses from sources such as SBA, SBDCs, SCORE, or equivalent institutions. Look for assistance of organizations for the same type of organizations, your lender, or professionals dedicated to this topic. I would also go to the American Institute of CPAs. They have some free resources there and many other guidelines that can help. Read the guidelines and the form instructions before applying for forgiveness. Very important. Many people don't like to read the things or make the assumption that everything is okay, and they begin to just to fill out an initial whatever is requested, but they don't read. Very important. That's why mistakes get committed. So my suggestion: read slowly, understand the guidelines and the forms, the forms that we talked, the 3508 regular, the S and the EC. Read the instructions, read thoroughly on all the aspects. Read again the original and signed submitted borrower application, looking for mistakes. In other words, check your first application. Check if everything was okay, because many you might have committed a mistake before that you didn't realize, and now when you request for forgiveness, it's gonna impact negatively. So check that. And, talk to your PPP lender. It's very important to be in communication with them about timelines, deadlines, websites that they have, trainings, tools provided to borrowers to submit the forgiveness application, training courses done by them, assistance availability, professionals advising in this topic. Fill out a draft of the PPP loan forgiveness application. Print the form, do it yourself, or ask your professional to run the numbers before applying to forgiveness. And check it. Discuss it depending on the amounts. It's a case-by-case situation. Sometimes, depending if we're talking huge amounts of PPPs, request a second opinion from a third party before submission. It might be worth it. I mean, what if a PPP becomes stays as a loan instead of being forgiven? Forgiven PPP loans are not taxed, and businesses might still deduct qualified expenses. But check this with your CPA or tax preparer. Very important. I'm not a CPA directly. I'm an accountant, but check this with your tax preparer or CPA. Some businesses are delaying the submission of the PPP forgiveness to maximize their opportunity to claim the employee retention credit. Again, consult this with your CPA or tax preparer. Important. Another takeaway: create a binder to be kept for 6 years with the supporting documentation discussed in the previous slides. Have a clear story of this topic in preparation for an audit. And also, let's see, references. Well, you can always go to www.sba.gov. And the Treasury has also their webpage. Here's the link. On my end, this is all I have to present. You can always contact us. We are the UTSA Small Business Development Center COVID Business Recovery Accelerator. We cover the Southwest Texas border SBDC network, which in the map that you see here in the presentation is the blue portion. That's the area of service that we cover. Our phone number is 210-458-2272. Email businessrecovery@utsa.edu. Services are from Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. And our webpage with a lot of resources available at no cost to you here is txsbdc.org/business recovery. My name is Nestor Astorga. I'm at your service. If you need to contact me later, feel free to send us an email. We have more colleagues on the call, very trained, very prepared, very experienced. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful afternoon.